Good morning, baseball fans, and welcome back to Dan's Vintage Baseball PC. Don't be fooled by the fancy name. It's just me and some friends talking about baseball cards. And here we are 2 days before Christmas doing an episode. Such dedication we have here. But anyway, so what what we're talking about today is Carl Furillo. Carl Furillo was the right fielder for the Brooklyn Dodgers. He played in from 46 to 1960, and we'll look at his baseball reference lines, and we'll look at his stats, and then we'll look at his cards. But I am joined today, very special guest, Gordon from the Athlete Archives. If you have not subscribed to Athlete Archives, I will put the link down in the description, and I definitely suggest that you go to Gordon's channel and check out. He does deep dives into this kinds of baseball stories that you don't see all the time. And not only are they super interesting, but he presents them in a not a light way necessarily, but definitely an enjoyable way. So since Gordon's a bio guy, I'm going to bring him on right away for the bio, and we can go through Furillo's stuff from the very beginning with our guests. So anyway, here is Gordon. Gordon, good morning.
Hey,
How are you?
good morning, Dan. Thanks for having me. Yeah, Carl Furillo's my kind of guy. He's a non-Hall of Famer, but really interesting personality and right up my alley.
Yeah, I collect Brooklyn Dodgers from that time period, 40s and 50s. Um, one of my displays, I don't think you can see it now, but one of my displays is that group of people, and the cards get rotated in. And I have all of Furillo's cards except for one, but that's a LA Dodgers, so we don't really worry about that one. And then, you know, I have to sub in some of his cards. So while I was doing this, I had the opportunity to take some down, put some up, but just opportunity to touch this one that I don't touch very often. It's the 49 rookie card
Yeah,
from
beautiful.
Bowman, and I love this card for any number of reasons. But we'll get into that. So
Nicely centered too.
yeah, no, it's a four. It's nicely centered. I don't know why it's a four. I guess it's not really sharp, but it's beautiful to me.
Hmm.
So, just as I usually do with guests, just tell us, a little bit about yourself, your baseball background, your collecting background. How did the channel start? How did the Athlete Archive start?
Yeah, the channel actually started because I felt like my son, who's 20, is a huge baseball fan, but he's not really anything that happened before, like say 2010, is just like foreign to him. Like most young guys, and even when I was younger, collecting. I started collecting in 1980, and anything that happened prior to 1980 just didn't even exist as far as I was concerned. So I wanted to kind of share some of the stories that I knew with him, and it kind of got me involved into doing kind of deeper dives with, like you said, I think my first episode was on Mark Fidrich, who was a big part of my childhood. He came and
Hmm.
spoke. He spoke to our high school, and he was just a big deal in the Detroit area in the late '70s. And so I started just putting together notes. My son is in college, and it was just something that we can kind of bond and talk about, and just kind of grew from there. Uh, I obviously love Hall of Famers. I don't want to represent that. They don't deserve their merit, but uh, I have particular fondness for the guys who are the glue.
Hmm.
And a lot of them have one or two good seasons, like Mark, uh, and then they're gone, and they should be remembered. So that's kind of the impetus for the channel. And as you can see, I try and mix in guys from the dead ball era, guys from the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and so on. And that's kind of how it's all gone. Last year was the first year, so I've only done 15 episodes so far.
Well, 15 well researched, well presented episodes, I might
Thank
say.
you.
So, I did my research for Furillo. Obviously, I collect his cards, so I know a little bit about him. Otherwise, and I know
Hmm.
you did. So
Hmm.
let's start off by talking about him. Basic information. Stony Creek Mills, Pennsylvania, where he both was born and died, is, I guess, right outside of Reading, Pennsylvania.
I noticed that too. So not too many guys are born and die in the same place, and
Yeah, yeah.
it is a small town. I don't know. I looked up the census population for 2010 is just over 1,000 people. So it's not like a big metro area.
So he, I guess he's like Yogi Berra and Joe DiMaggio, who have both had shows on this channel. He is the son of Italian immigrants.
Mm.
Furillo didn't graduate. I don't even think he graduated from high school. So he spent a lot of his career around educated people. Obviously, it was baseball, so there were a lot of not fully educated people. But he's said to have not been particularly happy about the fact that he was undereducated and was a little bit insecure about it. But that might have actually come come into play with some of his behavior later on. But anyway, so he's a minor league player in the area, and then he joins up with Reading, the actual club in Reading, which I know was a Phillies AAA affiliate later on. But at that point, was an independent team, and the Dodgers have said to purchase the team as one of their minor league clubs, which they did. But the joke is that they did it because of Carl Furillo's arm. So they bought an entire club for an arm, uh, and then he ends up going off to Montreal. I don't know. Did you look up at all any of his minor league stuff?
No, not the miners, but I'm not familiar with the area, but I did look and see Stony Creek is like 5 miles from Reading.
Yeah.
So I guess he didn't have to go very far. And of course, uh, that's probably where he picked up the nickname.
So he goes to Reading. Then he gets sent to Montreal, which is the next step before becoming a Dodger. And he has a breakout season in, I guess it's 1940 or 41. And then he is about to become a Dodger, but ends up becoming a person who joins up with the U.S. military. And because he was not a major leaguer, he's not one of those guys who got to play against other major leaguers in camps, in Michigan or
Right.
wherever. Furillo got sent overseas, and he was injured. He was in several battles, and he got multiple medals. So he is a World War II hero.
I did see that he declined the Purple Heart. I don't know if you read that.
Yeah, it's
He felt
interesting because he declined the Purple Heart because he said he got injured. It wasn't like in a battle or whatever. He got injured somehow or another, and he said it wasn't. It didn't show bravery or something to that effect, which is interesting because Yogi Berra, the other Italian American who I profiled several months ago, he also turned down a Purple Heart because he said he didn't want his mother to get worried that he had been really injured. But I guess Furillo was the same way. And of
yeah.
course, he and Berra would face off in the World Series. I don't know, 5 times, something like that. But we'll get to that. So anyway, so Furillo in '46 comes back to the United States and is signed and comes and plays for the Dodgers. He's literally into the major leagues. He's a part-time player in '46. Um, I don't know how he got MVP votes that year because he seems to have had a decent enough season, but nothing amazing. Maybe the MVP votes were because he butted heads with Leo DeRocha so much that everybody liked him. So that was my takeaway from '46 is that it's when he first meets DeRocha. DeRocha is in his face about something or another all the time, and I'm not sure why or how it started, but it comes to a head like 7 years later. So, anything about that particular
Uh,
relationship that you?
I just did want to jump back because you had mentioned
Oh,
his
good.
education, and I always think that it's interesting. It was a different era. Let's see, he was born in
Oh,
1922, so he's just a little bit younger than my grandfather was, and my grandfather only went to school through the 5th grade, I think,
mm,
and Furillo dropped out after the 8th grade, so he made it a little bit further than my grandfather. But I know why my grandfather bailed out, and it was because of the depression. He had to go to work, and
yeah.
I wouldn't be totally shocked if that's why Furillo ended up
I
living
think
slow.
that's actually 100% the truth. There's some reference in his bio to him sort of having a whole series of odd jobs, which is interesting because after he retired, it's the same way. and we'll get into that later
Right.
on too.
Right.
So 47, he starts to become the regular center fielder. He actually isn't the right fielder at the beginning. 47, he takes over for Pete Reeser, who was a great, great player, but had the penchant for running into walls and hurting himself. So he plays 47 to 48. 49, and he's in the World Series in which 46 the Dodgers lost to the Cardinals in a 3-game playoff, and I guess Furillo hardly played in that. 47 they were in the World Series, but they lost to the Yankees, and that's a common theme. 48 they didn't win. 49 he is replaced in center field. He moves to right field because a young man by the name of Duke Snyder, Edwin Duke Snyder, becomes the center fielder in 49, and the Dodgers go again to the World Series in 49. As you can see, Furillo, his terrific season gives him 6th in MVP voting. It's 322 with 100 RBIs. So 49 is a big year for Furillo and the Giants. I'm sorry, the Giants, the Dodgers. So what I wanted to do instead of going through his stats is try to go through his cards, because this is, after all, a baseball card channel. And these are the first 3 cards in Carl Furillo's run. He doesn't have a 48 Bowman. I did the research on this just a little while ago. There's only 2 Dodgers in the 1948 Bowman set. Pete Reeser, who was the guy who he replaced, and another gentleman whose name is Bruce Edwards is the other one. So there's only 2 Dodgers in the entire 48 Bowman set. And Furillo doesn't have any cards from 46 to 48. And then so that first card on the left is his 49 Bowman rookie card.
Yeah, that's a great one.
Yeah, I'm really happy with that. And
I love the 48, 49 Leaf set, so I do wish that he had a card in that, but I that 50 and 51 Bowman that you see there, I saw the photograph that image was based on, and I am a kind of an amateur illustrator myself, and you have to give credit to the guy who took the original photograph. You can't really have a great drawing like that without great source material.
yep.
But that image is just those 2 cards. That's my favorite card of his. I just love it. I love the 50 Bowman to begin with, but that card is just great.
Yeah, the 50 is that I haven't seen the image. In fact, I'm going to go search it out. Maybe I'll get a link to it in the description down below, if I can find it.
I
But
can send it to you.
the 50, oh, yeah, that would be wonderful. The 50 is his second card, of course. And the 51, of course, is the same um, drawing based on the same photograph. A little bit different, though. It looks like they, color-wise, he's a little less red and was a little more
Yeah.
blue.
Well, the photograph I saw is black and white, so
Okay.
yeah, I'll see if I can find it while we're on.
They may have re-illustrated, but anyway, so the 4 is nice. I bought that at the Chantilly show for I don't know, $20. It
Hmm.
was in an old SGC holder, which was either cracked or scuffed or whatever, and the card, the card itself was fine, but the holder was pretty ugly, so I got it really cheap, and then I just resubmitted it to SGC, and now it's in that beautiful new holder. The other one on the right, I didn't realize this till I took it down from the display. It's a 7.5, which honestly, you don't see many cards that high of a grade
Yeah,
in
that's a big one.
in these sets. But and I have so many cards. It's hard for me to always remember where I got them from, and I don't actually remember where I bought that Furillo 7.5 from. I know I didn't buy it on eBay, because anything over 7 in vintage, somebody on eBay is asking like 3 times comps. So I don't remember
Yeah.
where I got that from. Might have been Twitter, which
Yeah.
honestly, that's one of my best sources for cards is Twitter. So,
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry.
go ahead.
So I got dragged into Twitter. I had been on Twitter years ago, and then the toxicity just turned me off. So I got off of it completely, burned my account and everything. And when I got into buying vintage baseball, I was kind of limited, like most people, to eBay. Initially, I started going to shows, But then I got hooked up and met a couple guys on Reddit, and Hunter and Sean kind of dragged me into the Twitter
Mhm.
world, and that is definitely my favorite place to buy now.
Well, Hunter, as you may know, has been a guest on this show
Hmm.
previously.
Yep.
One of the good guys in the hobby, and certainly happy that he brought you over because you're in our special chat with about 20 other guys that
Yep.
know tons and tons about cards and stuff. And I guess Sean was the one who had hooked us two up and said, "You guys should do a show together." So here we are. So I can say the 52 Bowman I got in a lot, which is one of my ways that I like to buy cards. You buy them in large lots, and then you sell off the ones you're not interested in, and
Hmm.
make back the money you spent for the whole lot. So that Carl Furillo 52 Bowman was essentially free because I sold off the rest of the lot, and that card and another card. I forget. Oh, the 52 Bowman Hank Bauer. So I got both of those cards essentially for free because I got enough money from my resales to make up. So that was cool.
Well, I definitely need to learn how to do that.
Yeah, I it's an art, and sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes you don't
Yeah.
get everything back, and you end up paying more for the card than you would have set paid. But this was one of my success stories. The 53 Bowman color, which of course is my favorite set, is a card that I did get off on Twitter, and it's a 5, and it's a beautiful card. It's one of my favorite Furillo cards, not just because of the that it's in the 53 Bowman set, because it's the background. I believe that is Polo Grounds in the background.
Do you have that whole set?
I have the whole set in a binder, and
Hmm.
I'm currently building the whole set, rebuilding it all in slabs.
That's
And I'm
right.
about
I think you mentioned that on a recent
yeah,
podcast or something.
yeah,
That's
I'm
right.
about halfway through. And then the 54 Bowman is a 6. I got that in a set break with vintage breaks, and it looks so beautiful. And it's a little bit off center, but the corners are like super sharp. So I sent it. Actually subbed that to SGC, got the 6, which I feel is a pretty good grade. So let's go back to stat lines here. We got into 50 and 51. 52 is where he has a bad season because I
Yeah.
think he gets hurt. Um, but he comes back for the World Series, and this is one of my I guess pet games these days is the 1952 World Series. Game 5 goes into 11 innings. Carl Erskine pitches all 11 innings and gives up 5 runs in 1 inning early in the game, but then shuts them down completely. It's against the Yankees. And in the bottom of, I guess, no, it's the top. No, it's the bottom. It's the bottom of the 11th. Dodgers have taken the lead, and Erskine gives up a shot to Johnny Mize, goes all the way back into right field, and it's Yankee Stadium, so right field is the really short fence, and Furillo goes up and makes like the catch of the series, and saves the game, and then Erskine gets the next out. Giants. Why do we keep saying Giants? Dodgers win the game to go up 3-2 in the series, going home for 2 games to close it out, which of course they didn't do, and they lost the 52 World Series. But that game 5 is a literally a legendary game that doesn't get enough attention because there's only a little bit of footage of it. Fortunately, there is footage of Furillo's catch, which I tried to get like a screenshot for here, but the footage was just, I mean, when I paused it on it, it was just looked all blurry and stuff. So I
Yeah.
figured it'd be better to just talk about it.
So I have a little bit of insight. I don't know if you had read this but between 52 and 53, he had cataract surgery,
Uh,
and
I did not.
so yeah, in January of 53, he had cataract surgery, and you can see his batting average jumped almost 100 points.
Yeah. Yep.
So it helps to see baseballs. As a Braves fan, towards the end of Dan Uggla's career, they had discovered that he had some eye condition, and we were like, "Whoa, that's gotta be it," because the guy was just terrible, and he had his eye surgery, and he came back, and he was still terrible. So that
Yeah,
didn't help him. But
yeah.
Eddie
Sometimes
Rosario went through
it
something
help.
similarly.
Yeah,
Pardon,
sometimes
Dad?
it help. You know,
Yeah,
sometimes they get the glasses or whatever it is, and it helps. But I guess for Furillo, it really did because he was he well, first of all, DeRocha quit and I believe it was 48. So he no longer had that issue to worry about. And then I guess it was Bert Schotten came in, and Schotten thought that Furlow was a leadoff hitter. So he's actually the leadoff hitter. And you can see in 51, he leads the league in games, plate
yeah,
appearances, and at bats
yeah,
because he was the leadoff hitter for a team that was very good. They didn't make in fact, 51 is a heartbreaking season. That's the year that they lost the playoff series to the Giants. Um, but the other stat that I saw was that Furillo's teams in played 15 seasons, really only 50, if you discount 59 and 60. Uh, of his 15 seasons, his teams finished either first or tied for first in 9 of those seasons. So going back to 46 when they lost the playoff, and then 51 they lost the playoff. But all those other years, like
yeah.
47, 49, he's in the World Series. 52, 53 is in the World Series. 55, of course, they win the series. And 56 is in the series. And then 59, which we'll get to, he's in the series. He hardly played that year, but he had 2 huge hits. And 59 is another year that they had to play a playoff game or a playoff series, and they won. And I think it was the
Yeah,
Braves, right?
yeah, and that's the thing with these guys like Furillo that gets so easily overlooked because he played with. I mean, he played on incredible teams, but he played with just the stars of the game. You know,
Yeah.
from Jackie Robinson early in his career all the way through to the end, he was
Yeah.
playing on winning teams. So
So
uh,
he goes from the leadoff hitter, and then I guess Dressen takes over, and Dressen says, "You're not my leadoff hitter," and he starts batting 7th and 8th. So, like you said, he's on these teams where he's putting up, he's got MVP votes in 1, 2, 3, 4,
right,
5, 6, 7, 8 of his seasons. He's got MVP votes,
yeah,
but the highest he finishes is 5th because he's got Hodges and Snyder and Campanella and Jackie Robinson, and even guys like um, Billy Cox and Pee Wee Reese, and this Andy Pafko. There's always players in these teams that just
that
but they
53
won
season.
sometimes, right?
Yeah, that 53 season, he was ninth in MVP voting with that stat line. But then you look and you see who actually, who was ahead of him. It was the who's who of
Yeah,
baseball at the time. But
right. I
yeah,
think
it's crazy. He had a great season.
I don't think
I don't.
Snyder ever won an MVP, and Snyder had some years in that time period where you think he'd be a runaway MVP. The 53, I think, is the MVP is Campanella.
You're right. It
Yeah.
is Campanella. And
So
sorry.
as you mentioned, in 53, he's got the stat line, and one of the stat lines is that he wins the batting title as a
Hmm.
344 hitter, batting
Hmm.
7th or 8th in the lineup. And so I want to go ahead here. I put this at the end, but I wanted to go ahead here and talk about this photograph, which I found on the internet. And Furillo is not particularly well represented photograph wise. Um,
The 344 didn't click with me until now.
yeah. So
Okay.
the cool thing about this is he wins the batting title, and then he gets his photograph taken. But if you see, he's he's got a bandage on his left hand or his left wrist, more appropriately. And you could tell the story if you want of how he ended up with that broken. I think it's a broken wrist, and he
Yeah.
misses like the last 3 weeks of the season and wins the batting title because he didn't play the last 3 weeks of the season.
Well, we should tell it together because what I know of it was obviously he and Leo. They were like oil and water, and DeRocher. I think if I remember right, I didn't check my notes before we came on. I thought that he told Carl before the game that he better be on his toes, kind of
Yeah.
hinting at the fact that they were going to throw at him.
Yep.
And and at some point, I guess they did. I don't know if it was the first at bat or what. and Furillo and Leo were jawing at each other as he's heading down to first base, and he snaps and charges into the dugout, fist flying. And what we talked about earlier, I had read a quote from the uh, the day, and the home plate umpire was yelling, "Gosh, what was the quote? Kill him, Carl." So I just think, I can't imagine that today. Can you imagine like a Joe West or somebody standing out there egging on somebody to go after the opposing team's manager? It had to be great. I wish that those games had all been televised. I don't, I try and find stuff like that on YouTube because there are a lot of archived games.
Hmm.
Man, that would have been gold if that game had been archived somewhere.
Yeah, it would be like the when Reggie got taken out of the game in Fenway Park, and then he and Martin are going at it.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
and they have him and Martin jawing at each other.
yeah,
Yeah,
and that was televised, so you see that video all the time. I
yeah.
mean, every time there's a story of those Yankees or Martin or Reggie, whatever. But if there was a video of the call for going in, it's a good point.
Oh man, it
You'd
would have been
see it
that'd
forever.
be great. Yeah.
So so what happens, he's got this bad blood with Furillo going all the way back to 46. And when Furillo was, I'm sorry, he's got this bad blood with DeRocher going back all the way to 46 when he's the manager. And then, DeRocher quits and takes the job with the Giants. And of course, the Giants and Dodgers are, National League rivals, including that 51 season I just referred to. So 53, Furillo's killing the league. He's hitting 344. And so the the game before, DeRocha says something about how you were jumping out of the way of that left-hander. You better look out for the right-hander in this game. And I guess they kind of threw at his feet or something the game before. Then this time they threw at him. And yeah, runs into the dugout. He apparently gets the best of DeRocha and like has him in a headlock, and they have to separate them. And he does get separated and then hits the floor and breaks his wrist in the whole fighting thing, or his hand. It's either his wrist or his hand. And the game is in September, and I guess that the division, the not the division, the league is out of hand by that point. The Giants are so far behind that DeRocha doesn't give a crap anymore. So and Furillo misses like 3 weeks of the season and wins the batting title. He comes back for the '53 World Series though, which sadly they lost. So 54 we looked at card wise. 55 and 56. I know the 55, which is a 6, I bought on Twitter. The 56, I don't remember where I bought it, but I had it raw for years, and then I sent it into SGC because I looked at it when I was starting to figure out I'm pretty much done with Furillo, so I might as well get this one. And it looks so much better than a 4. I was kind of disappointed in that grade. But anyway, in that card, um, all the 56s have the big portrait and then the
Yeah.
smaller action shot. I did some research, and that photograph is indeed from the 1953 World Series, and the catcher who's reaching out to tag him is in fact Yogi Berra.
Really?
And I've tracked down the photograph, which I'll do another link below. I probably should have put it in the slideshow. I've tracked down the photograph of that to the exact game and inning and everything, because
Awesome.
there's a second version of that which is panned out a little bit, and
Mhm.
you can see uh, Gil Hodges, Eddie Lopat, and this is I think it's like the third inning of Game 3 or the fifth inning of Game 3. Billy Cox hits a double and drives in both Hodges and Furillo off of Eddie Lopat, and so I was able to figure out exactly which inning of which game and what was going on because of the second version of this photograph, which is a little further out, and you
Mm.
can see other players. So that was cool.
The important question is, was he safe like Jackie was, or was
He
he out?
he was safe. Well, he was called safe.
Okay.
The umpire, by the way, the umpire is in this the wider version of this photograph. He's literally right there. His face is practically in Furillo's right knee there. So he's right on it. I think Berra was just late coming back. The throw was sort of up the line, like
Mhm.
where like more sorts towards the infield. But you can see, it's funny, you can see Lopat in the photograph, not looking all that happy. He's just giving up a 2-run double to Billy Cox, of all people. So, so that's
Not
the 56. Of
not
course,
not to take you on too far of a tangent, but that's the kind of stuff like finding that photograph. Those are the photographs. I know that Lucas and some of the guys that we know are really into photographs now. That seems to be kind of a hot thing,
yep.
and those kind of historical photographs. That's the stuff, man. I would love to have something like that where you could tie it directly to a baseball card or some big event.
If I 100% agree with you, if I saw a Type 1 photograph of that,
Yeah,
the the Furillo scoring with Yogi Berra, and if I saw a Type 1 of that photo, I would buy it. It
yeah.
would literally be one of those things that I wouldn't ever be outbid. But you just don't see them that much. And I mean, some of these things that might have been a press photo anyway, which means that
Mm.
you could probably get it as a. I have a few of those press photos, um, where it's that you can see how they cut it out for the thing, and then sometimes they put the actual print from the
Right.
newspaper is glued on the back, so that they used it and where they used it.
And
But
there's usually like date and time stamps or date stamps on the back, right?
exactly, yep.
Yeah, cool.
So the 55, that's just only it's weird because not weird, but it's uncommon that a player would stick with Bowman only for their entire run of Bowman cards, except for the 48. He's in
Mhm,
49 through 55, but he doesn't have any tops cards until 56 because Bowman doesn't exist in 56. But the 55 card, which is not a great card, honestly, it's just him kneeling, and it's sort of
mhm.
not a great picture of him. But 55 is when, of course, they win the World Series, the Dodgers, at long last. The
Yeah, I wonder
boys.
why he didn't sign a contract with Topps because they're obviously we know guys in the 55, they had both Topps and Bowman cards, so
Yeah, yeah.
I wonder what the story is there.
I
Maybe he
mean,
didn't like Cyberger.
yeah. I mean, it might be a money thing. It might be just somebody pissed him off. He kind of had a
Mhm.
short fuse.
Yeah,
Um,
he was a bit of a hothead, it seems.
yeah, and so yeah, there's plenty of guys. Campanella, Hodges, Berra, all those guys have cards in both the Tops and the Bowman series. Some guys are Bowman only. I mean, like Mantle doesn't have a Tops card in
Mm,
54 or 55. He just
true.
went full Bowman for those 2 years. But it's odd to have somebody not ever have a Tops card until Bowman goes out of business.
Mhm.
So Carl is he's with the Dodgers to the end of the Brooklyn. The 57 card, which interestingly enough, I also hit in a vintage break set break as a raw card and submitted it. The 5 is fair grade on that. It's a little bit off center, as you can see. The bottom left has a little bit of a soft corner, as does the bottom right. But the 5 is
Oh,
a good grade on that.
yeah, the 57s too, a lot of them I do not like, but that is a good image. A lot of them are just like the Mantle in particular, not to offend anybody, but I think that's the worst Mantle card. I hate that Mantle. It's
All right.
dark.
We could have that discussion because I kind of like the 50s. I'm not a big fan of 57 generally. It's a set that I have chosen not to build because
Yeah.
I just, I don't feel like having a bunch of common cards that I really don't even, not even compelled by the photograph. But this, as you said, is a terrific photograph. He's got the 3 bats.
Yeah.
He's got the baggy pants with a little dirt on them, and then of course it's a lot of these photographs, and that's one of the great things about the 57 Top Series is a lot of the photographs of the Dodgers are taken actually in Ebbets Field,
Mhm.
a field which would not be used after 57 and which would be torn down, and I believe it was 59. They finally got the construction to tear it down, depressingly. And then there's this second card, the bonus card here, um, the Dodgers Slugger cards, and I'm not a big fan of compilation cards or multiplayer cards,
I am not either.
but
Yeah.
this one is my favorite. Not only because there's Furillo and Hodges and Campanella and Snyder. I mean, you pack in some pretty pretty good star power there. 3 Hall of Famers and a guy like Furillo who could be. But also, that's the right field wall at Ebbets Field behind them that Furillo is most famous for, knowing every inch of. So that's kind of a cool photograph too.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of the composite cards either, but I will say that when you have like everybody in one frame, it's a little bit different for me than when you have like just, and again, not to go off on much of a tangent, but like the Pete Rose rookie card, the floating heads. Oh, terrible, man. It's a terrible card. I can't stand cards like that. But
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. But even like there's a Aaron, it's Aaron and Mays, and I think it's a 64 card. I don't know what they call. They come up
well,
with these
there's
stupid names for them.
and
But
there's the Fence Busters card of Hank and Eddie Matthews. That's a pretty
right,
cool
right.
one.
That's a good one. I mean,
But
there's some of them that are good, but for
yeah,
the most part, I mean, there's one with like Willie Mays and Bill Rigney. I mean, like, I know Bill Rigney has some historical significance in the
yeah,
game, but I don't give a crap about
yeah.
seeing a Bill Rigney card with Willie Mays. So Master Mentor, I think they call it something like that. But
Hmm.
those are the kind of cards that I could do without. But anyway, this one's a good one. And so 57, they leave Ebbets Field forever, breaking the hearts of millions and millions of people, going down generations. Um, and Furillo, we talked about it. His play in right field was ridiculous. Now I wrote, what did I do with it? I have some notes here for myself. Um, he had double-digit assists from right field for 8 straight seasons.
Wow.
Double-digit assists for 8 straight seasons. Um, he had uh, the ability to throw guys out at first base. He would take the ball off the wall, on a carom off the wall, turn around and throw out slow players at first base. He did that
Yeah,
like a few times a year.
that's the ultimate slap in the face
Yeah,
as a
I
hitter.
forget there was a pitcher. There was a pitcher I think he threw out at first base, and then Furlow's next at bat, he got thrown at by the same pitcher. And
Awesome.
then there was the other thing that he did quite a bit, which he got a few guys a year on, was rounding first. Guys would get hits and they'd think double, and then Furillo would catch the ball off the
Back.
wall
Mm.
and swing around and throw behind them. And so the other thing is that Furillo said the wall was made up of concrete and like I guess sort of metal that had kind of a give to it. And so if the ball hit the big part of the metal, it would just fall straight down. If it hit the concrete, it could go in any number of directions. So he kind of studied that and made that his
Yeah,
own.
I read that too. That some like based on the flight of the ball, he would either charge the wall or back off the wall, and he knew that corner. I wish we had Statcast stuff from back then. Obviously, he had a great arm. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think we mentioned that his nickname was the Reading Rifle.
Yes, yes,
And
yes, yes. I think
there's
if we go back, well, I talked about how the Dodgers are said to have bought the Reading Club because of his arm. But
yeah,
if you go back to the beginning, you can see he's got the nicknames are Scoonge and the Reading
mm,
Rifle. He was also called the Arm,
yeah,
and he pitched a little bit, but they said he he had such terrible control as a pitcher that he couldn't really pitch.
mm.
Um, but he had the strong arm. Now Scoonge is an odd nickname, but
Uh,
I think we both know
it's
what it is.
well, it's a food. It's an Italian food that I've never had. I have no idea what it is. Scungeli or something of that. Have you had
Squingiel,
it? Scungio?
Squingiel, which is spelled. I have my brother has been married to a 100% Italian woman from Brooklyn, who
Okay.
is my sister-in-law, who's become basically my sister. So I have a sister. I consider they've
Yeah.
been married for close to 40 years. So I have had a lot of contact with people, and especially with food, since she's like the greatest cook of all time. And so I know scungeel. Scungeel is a snail, and it's spelled like if we were to spell it out and read it, it would be scungili or
Okay.
scungili. But scungeel is a snail, and it's a part of the snail, and I guess it's a delicacy. And
Have you had it?
yes, I've had
Okay.
scungeel. Yeah, and it's
And
it's usually served with like a marinara or something. Um, and
I mean,
I've had it's a little bit weirder than squid, which you see in a lot of it's not squid. It's a different thing from squid, but you see squid in a lot of Italian cooking.
he must have really liked it to be given a moniker.
Well,
Of,
um, I think to a certain extent, uh, some of it was probably not in the best of faith. Uh, you mentioned, you mentioned uh, DeRocher
yeah.
talking to uh, Furillo before the game when they hit him in '53. There's also a reference to Herman Franks, who was a coach for the Giants for many years and ultimately became the manager in the '60s. Not a particularly good manager, but Herman Franks is said to have given Furillo a threat, and at the end of it was an anti-Italian slur. So,
Oh,
some of that, the nickname might not have been, it might have been kind of making fun of
yeah.
him.
You know what? That didn't even occur to me because today, like, it's just hard to even imagine that Italians were thought of in that, in a negative way of any sort. It's just I don't get it. So I
Yeah.
didn't even think about that. But yeah, hmm.
Um,
Different
my
time.
sister-in-law, who I consider my sister these days, her father, Pete, who passed away, I don't know, about 5, 6 years ago, was a war hero himself. He is a 100% Italian American war hero who was in the Pacific and
Hmm.
lost hearing in one of his ears because one of his ships that he was on was hit. I don't know if it was a kamikaze or if it was just like Japanese gunfire, but his ship was hit. So Italian Americans have many stories of heroism in World War II, and I think
Hmm.
maybe that might have helped get rid of the anti-Italian, you
Hmm.
know, uh, attitude that
Hmm.
permeated some people's minds in the pre-war period. So we got to 57. Now we're at 58. I don't collect LA Dodger cards in my Dodger collection, except for Koufax,
Uh,
who plays, his best years are in LA. Um, and so I don't have this card in a slab, but I do have it. And I don't remember where I got it. As you can see, it's creased in the middle. It's not anything I'm collecting, but I know that this card, and the reason I still have it, is because this card is in the book. The I don't know what's called. I have it down here. I can't even get to it. Um, it's the Great American Trading Bubblegum and Trading Card Book. I don't know if you know it, but I'll link to it.
no, I haven't heard of that one.
It's a book that came out in the late '70s,
Okay.
and one of the authors is still with us, and he's on Twitter actually, and he's fairly active on Twitter. But it's a book that goes through a bunch of baseball cards from the '50s and has funny stories about it. So
Oh,
this one, they're actually in. Furillo's actually in it. So that's where I keep this card because I collect any card that I remember from that book. Um,
that's a great card. I
yeah, no,
what's
it's 58. I mean, it's not my favorite year, but yeah, the yellow is pretty striking.
Yeah, not my favorite year either, but that's a sharp one there. So I gotta poke a little bit at you. What's the hang up on LA? Because I know, yeah, the team moved. You can blame Walter O'Malley and but the players are still Dodgers, but you can't go there.
Well, I mean, it's they ripped the team out of New York,
Yeah.
transplanted them 3,000 miles to the west, and by '58, Furillo has a good year in '58. He actually is one of the few Dodgers that somehow or another does well when they go into the LA Coliseum. They played in the LA Coliseum for several years
Yep.
before
That's
Dodger
right.
Stadium was built. But Hodges' career goes down the tubes. Campanella has the accident.
Mm-hmm.
Jackie is traded and then retires.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Snyder has a really tough time in LA. So by the time the team gets to LA, it's a very different team.
Mm.
Um, Erskine is pretty much done by the time they get to LA. I mean, Newcomb isn't even on the team anymore. It's not the same team from the early
Yeah,
50s.
that's a good point.
So that's part of it. And the other part of it is, like I said, they ripped the team out. So I don't have anything against LA. I mean, the LA
Yeah.
Dodgers have a great history in LA. It's just not my thing. Um,
So Dan, I collect Hank Aaron,
right.
and I have a really hard time buying his Milwaukee Brewers cards.
Yep.
Kind of a similar thing. It's like, and that's no fault of Hank, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's no fault of Hank, but to see him in
And
a
those
Brewer,
cards, I'm old enough to have collected those cards
mm,
as a kid. And in fact, by 75 and 76 when he's on the Brewers, I had already started to fade out of collecting because I was like 12, 11, 12, 13 around that time period. And so I was starting to become too cool for baseball cards. And so I don't even like those cards that much because at that point I wasn't even into cards as much. Like I'm
uh,
not even a big fan of the 75 set, even though like some people find it's the greatest 70s set of all time.
mm,
Because personally, I wasn't really moved by it because I was less into cards. And so I understand exactly where you're coming from on
yeah,
that, but for
yeah,
different reasons. So we've got this is his last card.
yeah.
And obviously, the reason I have it is not because it's a LA Dodgers card, but because Carl Furillo signed it.
Hmm.
And so he,
Great card.
60s. So what happens with Furillo is he has a great year in 58, 59, when the Dodgers actually win the World Series. He, he's hardly playing at all because he's hurt. He's got back issues, leg issues, and he ends up getting big hits in both the 3-game playoff against the Braves and in the World Series. So Furlow actually earns his World Series ring with the 59 Dodgers, even though that year I think he only had like 150 at bats. But he's still hurt in 1960. He gets, I don't know, maybe half a dozen at bats or whatever, and then he's hurt, and they released him in May of 1960. And so he's like one full season short of the uh, getting the next level of pension. He doesn't get paid for the rest of the year, so he sues the Dodgers. He sues the Dodgers for the remainder of his salary for the 60 season, and he ends up winning. In 61, they offered him a coaching position, and he came into spring training, but he never got rid of his lawsuit. And then he won the lawsuit, and then they fired him from his position as a coach, or they never invited him back. So Furillo kind of leaves the game under bad. He feels like he was blacklisted. He leaves it under sort of bad vibes, and um, he's not a college educated guy. He ends up working in construction, and when Roger Kahn writes The Boys of Summer, he finds Furillo working as a elevator repairman in the World Trade Center.
In the
Um,
World Trade Center. Yeah.
and so he lives in Brooklyn for a little bit and works. He owns a deli, I think, and then he moves back to Reading, and then works in construction. And I guess his company ends up getting the job for the World Trade Center. But after that, I guess that kind of reconnected him with the sort of baseball world, the retired guys, and going to shows, and he became kind of a prolific signer in the end of his life. Whereas from like let's say 61 to like whenever Kahn wrote that book, like mid 70s, late 70s, he's kind of out of the game. But I think from the 70s, from whenever that happens to the end of his life, which is not that long, he goes
Hmm.
to all the shows. And the Brooklyn Dodgers became kind of a legendary, like the once they left Brooklyn, and then years passed, and people had such great remembrances of them. They had a lot of shows where they would show up with the Boys of Summer would all be there and that kind of thing. So
They're in
Joe
New
Pat,
York for
yeah,
you. You
yeah,
remember that?
yeah,
It's interesting because I don't know how much. Hopefully, he was able to earn some from that era of signing at shows. Um, I like I said, I grew up in the collecting in the late '70s, early '80s, and I saw some pretty big stars in the day at baseball
yeah.
card shows too, and it was always a big deal. But uh, what guys get for signing now is crazy.
Tell
I
me about it.
I fell in love with Al Kaline, and when I got his autograph in person, and I think I may have paid like $10 for it. I got Cal Ripken's autograph in person, but like I just saw something today here locally. Ronald Acuna Jr. is signing, and it's $200.
Yeah,
Starts at 200 and goes up depending on what
yeah,
you're having autographs. So, and
yeah.
Ronnie's not exactly hurting for money, but
Yeah,
it's
I saw
sometimes.
Joe Montana at a show in Westchester, and this was a while ago. It's pre-COVID, so it's like 18 or 19, and he started at 250 for Joe
Man.
Montana. And so
And go ahead.
I, I have a show coming up in Westchester. It's the I forget what they call it, but it's like the White Plains Civic Center, I think it's called, and they're having autograph guests, and I need to get one Juan Marichal card signed, and I did a TTM with Marichal for $10, like
Wow.
5 years ago. And now for me to get the second card signed that I need, it's $59. I gotta pay $60. Why don't I just mail it to him? But anyway, I'll probably spend the $60 and have
Yeah.
Juan Marichal sign the card that I forgot to mail when I sent out the TTM.
Can you go back to that 60 card you have?
Yes.
That is a beautiful. So one of the things I don't have, uh, I had a couple of cards autographed in person. The one that sticks out to me is Alan Trammell, and he's got that '78 rookie card where he's only on the bottom corner, and so he signed right over his face, and it bothers me. So
Ooh.
the location of this autograph couldn't be any better. Like I hate when guys sign right over their face or right over, a key
Yeah,
part of
this
the
is
card.
you're absolutely right. This is not an easy card to sign either,
Yeah,
because it doesn't have a big wide open. I guess the space to the right of his face, but then he'd have to kind of sign
yeah,
it, sideways.
and the
But yeah,
blue is awesome.
this is a terrific card too. I'm actually a big fan of 60. I'm not building the set, but I do collect them when I see them. And when I saw this, I was like, okay, so it's a Furillo card. It's a beautiful card, and it's signed and it's slapped. So I mean, it checked a lot of boxes for me.
Hmm.
And I know I got this actually. Speaking of Westchester, I bought this in the last big Westchester show, which would be, I guess, a year ago, probably January of 24, of 23. I'm sorry. And so, yeah, I'll go back there and maybe look for the same guy to come up with it. And he actually caught me a deal on this too. I don't remember what the sticker price was, but I know I got about 75% was my deal on that. So,
No,
um, yeah, it was pretty cool.
yeah, great
So,
card.
Carl Furillo passes away. I guess it's 89. He
Hmm.
contracts leukemia. It was chronic leukemia, which is known as CLL, which is not something that is people can live with CLL for 5-10 years. I know my aunt did, but I guess his was I don't know when he was diagnosed, but he passed away in 1989 at the age of I think 67. So I guess from that like Roger Angel situation to 89, so probably about 10 years or so, he was doing a lot of signing and you know getting his glory again as the boys of summer were making their rounds. So I guess that's the sort of happy ending for the Reading Rifle. Um, and then of course there's this photo. I just love this photo. And I didn't notice the hand until the end. So then I did a little bit of research, and yeah, this was taken in September of 1953. I don't know what stadium has 344. I don't think that's.
Yeah, I
I,
don't know.
I don't think that, and I don't know, maybe it is. I should probably have done the research on that. But anyway, my friends,
Yeah.
so that's Scungio or the Reading Rifle or Carl Furillo. Uh,
Yeah, a couple things that I had noted that I forgot to interject on that I thought was really interesting because again, in today we see these guys and their contracts and they're in another world, right? I mean, it's so much different from how it was in the 40s and 50s,
yep.
uh, and I think it was I was when I read his SABR biography, they had made note of. Where is my note? I can't read my notes fast enough, but essentially, the fans kicked in to buy him a Buick at the end. Do you know that story? What's going on there?
Yes,
It's
there's actually
crazy.
two times. I don't know why the first one. I don't know what year it was. It was like in the early 50s. There was something where the fans, and I think one of the fans was like some famous person, kicked in some money and bought him a car. But then in 57, I think the Dodgers knew they were leaving and they were doing like a day for each of the players. And
Mhm.
so Carl Furillo Day in 57 at Ebbets Field, he was given a different car, a new car. So he got two cars from the fans. Good for him. I guess, yeah.
Amazing.
No
Yeah.
fans are buying Ronald Acuna a car. I can tell you that. Well,
Yeah,
the funny
hilarious.
thing was, I forget. It's Jeff McNeil and Francisco Lindor. Jeff
Yeah.
McNeil won the batting crown in
Yeah.
22, I guess it was,
Yeah, what
and
what
I
did he promise him he was gonna buy him?
this guy bought a car.
Okay, a car, okay.
So
And then he
Lindor
didn't.
promises to buy McNeil a car, um, and then doesn't do it for a little while,
Yeah.
and then I think maybe a year later, he did end up buying him the car. So
Wasn't that I think that was McNeil and Freddie Freeman were coming down to the wire, I think, going into that last day. And, uh, I'm a anti-Met fan or Met, uh,
yeah,
guy, but, I think McNeil sat out that day.
did
Um,
he? I don't remember
I
the
think
the
so.
the, the how he did win the batting title.
Yeah.
Francisco Lindor took about a year to get him the car, but ultimately I saw a photograph of him giving him and a real nice thing too, like a big giant like $100,000 SUV.
Well, of
You know,
course.
hundred
Yeah.
thousand dollars for Francisco Lindor. I mean, it's a drop
Yeah.
in the bucket. So anyway, my
So
friend, thank you again for hanging. I like this show because it was less more, it's more just kind of throwing around some stuff rather than my sort of organized way that I do it, and relaxing too. So
yeah,
uh,
I appreciate the time.
yeah,
I I do wanna add if I can add one more thing.
sure,
We had talked briefly, so, I didn't see Carl Furillo play. So a lot of times, when I'm looking at somebody historically, I try to look at their numbers and their stats and see like who do they kind of stack up against somebody that I might know. And I'd hinted to you earlier that he compared to me, he looks pretty comparable to Nick Markakis, and
yep,
they both had 15-year seasons or 15-year careers. They if you compare them on Baseball Reference, very similar. Furlow hit 192 homers to Nick's 189. They're within 12 RBI of each other. Very similar stolen bases. Very similar batting average and everything. So, um, and Nick also was known for having a strong arm.
yeah,
I
right
think,
field, yep,
yeah, they played the same position. Furillo may have been a better fielder. I'm not sure looking at these defensive WAR stats, but um, in any case, I think it's always interesting to be able. That's the beauty of baseball is, thank goodness, from the early days, there was very good record keeping, and so we can go back and kind of look at statistics and
yeah. The thing about Furillo, and I'm glad you brought this up because this is something I was going to talk about. Furillo's advanced fielding stats
mhm,
are weirdly low. Like he has a negative defensive WAR for his career. And I'm not sure why that is. His errors were a little high. I think probably a lot of his errors were trying to throw behind guys or throw guys out of first base. But I think part of that is because the right field area in Evans Field was not very big. So I think he loses a lot of points in range factor because he didn't have that much up ground to cover. He had the wall was basically what he was covering for the most part.
Mhm.
I don't know advanced stats that much,
Mhm.
but based on the stories and the other stats and stuff, you would think Furillo would have been a fabulous fielder stats wise, but I don't it doesn't make sense to me that his D-WAR is so low.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know enough about what goes into calculating that stuff. I just,
Yeah.
look at the number and go, "Oh, interesting."
Well, they
But
say that with Andrew Jones's numbers or his fielding numbers are really bloated, and Jay Jaffe did a thing on this that he used to just take the balls away from guys. Like Kolesko would be so bad that Jones would just run into his territory and catch the ball, and it wasn't
mhm,
like it really enhanced Jones's range factor, but it wasn't anything special. Like
mhm.
he
Oh,
was
okay.
catching balls like, or I don't forget. I guess Justice played right field, so it was like, or maybe I don't know if he overlaps with Justice, but there's a period where the right fielder is just as bad as Klesko in left field. So Jones
Yeah.
caught a lot of balls that he wouldn't normally, like most center fielders would have just said, "Oh, yeah, you get it."
Oh,
So I think that's part of the problem for Furillo is that he covers so little ground that he doesn't get much of a range factor. And Snyder was a fantastic center fielder, so it wasn't like he was taking balls away from Snyder either.
hmm.
Um, so I mean, that's the only thing I can figure because otherwise, I mean, like I said, his error numbers are a little high, but error numbers in that period are much higher. We were doing
Well,
the Joe Cronin show last week, and
yeah,
Joe Cronin in one season in the 30s had 62 errors, which would
yeah.
be completely unheard of in today's.
I happen to be reading finishing a book on Buck Weaver right now, and he got slammed quite a bit for errors committed at short and third. But the fields that they played on,
Yeah,
I mean, my gosh, man, it's
yeah,
like uh, you can't compare. You can't compare
yeah.
yesterday's fields to today's fields. So,
No.
but
Anyway, so those are our parting thoughts. Thanks again for coming on.
thanks, Dan. Appreciate it. Great time. Really appreciate you having me.
Viewers, next week, I'm not sure what I'm going to do next week. But I'm not going to have a guest. I might even have a midweek show because I just got an SGC box back. And so I'm not sure what the schedule is moving forward because of the holidays, but thank you for coming on 2 days before Christmas,
Of
Gordon. I
course.
know as soon as I'm
Well,
done, I'm gonna turn off the video and immediately get dressed and go to the store because I've got to
that's
shop.
what I was just gonna say. Today's my shopping day. It's December 23rd.
It is a Saturday, which is good too. So
Yeah.
all right, I'm gonna say goodbye to viewers and to you, Gordon, and thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Dan.